I thought the flickering lights were part of your dance show, but it seems to have righted itself. And I did like the part where you said, make sure you incorporate and do things that you like. So, Mike, I'm gonna have to incorporate drinking beer into our practice. I think that's a pretty noble cause. Oh, okay. Whatever I'm told. Last but certainly not least, we have the only Canadian president here with us, Jim Rogers. Yes, his bio's on the sheet. You can all read that. But there's one item of interest that isn't there. Jim is the oldest of 14 children, all from the same parents, and no twins. That's a big number. So please. Oh, there he is over here. You switch sides on me. Jim Rogers.
How's that? Thank you. Thank you. Anyway, thank you, Travis, for that introduction. He did mention I'm the oldest of 14 children. I'm 73. My youngest brother is 53. So 14 kids in 20 years. Some people ask me, how the heck did that happen? Well, besides the obvious, I'm told, I think it's only partly apocryphal, that often, would appear very often, when my mom and dad went to bed in the evening, my dad would say to my mom, who, by the way, was very, very hard of hearing, and that was the reason for 14 kids. And now you're thinking to yourself, well, what would that have to do with it? Well, she was so hard of hearing, my dad would often say to her, well, Mary, do you want to go to sleep, or do you want to do you know what? And she'd go, what? You can guess it, you'd be correct. But I never told that in front of my mother, who's deceased. Matt, I couldn't get over your comment that some people say, well, don't take it personally, it's just business. Last time I heard that was from Tony Soprano. You might want to rethink that. Are you Italian? Oh, okay, well, that maybe it's not as worrisome. I like the approach that Marv used, the workshop approach where he asks questions at the end, and I'll do my damnedest to try and get finished in 45 minutes or so that I can answer any questions you may have. So I'd urge you to write down the question and not interrupt me, though. But I'll give you whatever time you may want at the end, including no time, if indeed there is no time. I'm going to talk a little bit about a whole host of things under 3 headings, those being marketing, sales, and practice management ideas. Now, if I do this correctly, that didn't happen. I want to move the slides along. I press the advance.
There you go.
Okay. Can we blow that? Oh, you got it up there. That's fine. Let me back it up first. Shoot, sorry guys. Let's start with definitions, because I think they're very important. Sometimes the words marketing and sales are mixed together. They're quite different. So for clarity then, because again, I'm going to give you ideas, hopefully, that are of value under each of these heads. Marketing is everything you do to reach and persuade prospective clients to open a crack in the door between you and them. So that marketing is an outbound exercise. Everything you do to kind of try and bring them to the front door. Right? Sales is everything you do once they're there to cause a transaction, hopefully, to occur. And finally, practice management is everything you do to improve the management and operational efficiency of your business. So very briefly, my career path was broken into 3 segments, roughly of, thank you, roughly of the following periods. First 5 years in the business, first of all, I graduated as an economist, so-called, and worked in a steel mill as an economist, except I discovered very quickly that I was counting ingots and sweeping the floor. So realized that if that's economics, that's not me. I then thought, well, before I go to do something else, I should stop and test myself. And this is something that I've done with all our 4 kids as well. I went to an industrial psychologist, paid him money that I didn't have, but I wanted to make sure that the next step I made in my career, I didn't sort of waste another 3 or 4 years, and kept doing that until I found my niche. And I asked him to test me, and he did. And as I say, it cost him more money than I had. And he said to me, you can do 3 things well, 2 of which would require going back to grad school, and I didn't have any money, having a series of student loans, and I thought, gee, I got to work, and I'll go to grad school later. So I went to the only person I knew that was a salesman who happened to have sold me a life insurance policy at university, and started in a sales career where they told me there was only 1 job left in the entire country for a salesperson in that company. Flat, bold lie. Anyway, I bought it, which explains why it was an easy sale for life insurance guy to begin. After about 3 months, I realized, oh, I should have taken one of the other 2 options. But I really couldn't. So as it happened, the head marketing guy came up from Toronto, the head office of the insurance company, and asked me how I was doing. And I said, frankly, I don't think I'll be here much longer. I really don't like this. And that's because I was taught black box selling. I talked to some of the younger people today about that. If I get a minute later on, I'll tell you what black box selling is. But anyway, it was a poor sales approach, but it was all he had, and I don't blame him for it. But I thought, I can't do this if this is how it's done. You know, beating down the doors at Safeway, and catching the guy putting stocks on the shelf, tapping him on the shoulder, the guy pumping gas. It's like, whoa, this is tough stuff. So I said, I'm going to probably quit. And he said, well, what would you like to do? And I said, well, I've done a little research, and I know that your head office has a marketing department, and they develop new products on the individual side of the house in this case. And you have mostly actuarial students or actuaries in there. And I said, I think I could help those guys in terms of understanding the products from the perspective of a consumer. He said, you've only had 3 months experience. I said, well, I acknowledge that. Anyway, he said, let me think about it, and I'll talk to the guy that runs that department. And he did, and they said, okay, here's the thing though. You have to, for the next year, you have to sell this much insurance. And if you do, we will give you a job in our head office in the marketing department. The reason we want you to sell the insurance is he wants to add a leg to the department. He wants a guy that can help develop the products from his experience, though limited then, and go out and, importantly, go to all our agencies across the country, introduce the product to the agency sales force. They will have lined up 2 or 3 appointments in the afternoon. You'll go out with one of the other, the men or women, and as the expert from, in this case, Toronto. I did that. I made the sales they asked for. I went exactly a year to the day, flew to Toronto, and started in this job. And the best thing that happened to me was this job. It was with a company called Imperial Life, who are no longer in the business. No fault of mine, but they're no longer in the business. But what made it such a wonderful experience was I got to see how their best salespeople worked and how their worst salespeople worked. No surprise, I sold the way their worst people sold. But I thought, you know, I can do this if I do it the way the other fellows, men and women, did. And so I paid attention, close attention. I made notes of what I liked, what I didn't like, and I developed a lengthy business plan, and I vowed that I would go back to Vancouver and set up my own business agency following my business plan. I got 2/3 of the way through my MBA at U of T, and I finished at SFU when I went home at nights, and away we went. So the fact of that experience, being able to see successful people in action, did wonders for me. So here's the first sales idea for you people who, especially the younger people again. If you look at the medical profession, you look at what people do who've gone to university, they become MDs, what happens in the first 2 or 3 years that they get out? Well, they become an intern to begin with, and then a resident, and then they're fully fledged. What are they doing when they are acting as an intern or a resident? They're learning to apply the skills they learned at university, correct? On the job. They follow around a senior person who is a full-fledged physician, and they learn. And the physician will go into a patient's room. They always ask permission of the patient, and he'll say to the class, how does this patient present? And the kids will look at the chart at the end of the bed, and they'll go and look at the patient, and they'll give their response. So they learn by observing and doing. All that, whatever, 6 years of university, undergraduate science degree, 3 years of medicine, I guess that makes 7 years. Anyway, they learn by doing. How do we learn? Well, I don't know about you, but I learned, somebody gave me a book. I studied the rate book. I studied all the company literature, started working on my CIU. But did I ever see a successful salesman work? Not in that first 3 months, I didn't. Did I see it later? Fortunately, yes. So the thing I'd say to you, young people in particular, is ask permission to sit in on a meeting where your senior salesperson, man or woman, is meeting a prospective client or a client. And get as much of that experience as you can. In our firm, we have done that for the last 20 years. The advisor will give the protege a copy of his or her agenda for the meeting. They'll discuss it for 5 minutes. He'll say what my goal is here, and then he'll ask permission of the client. Would you mind if a younger person sat in on the meeting? You know what? They never, ever refuse. But we all say to the younger person, shut up. You're here to observe, talk after, or talk if I ask you to. Otherwise, don't say anything. And I want you to sit in a seat over here, which is already set up, so you can see the reaction of the prospective client or client and me, because you're between us and off to the side, so you're not in anybody's sight line, and you can study our reactions, because you need to see the emotions of what's going on as well as the hard facts. Excellent training. I had it fortuitously by chance. You can create that environment for yourself if you want, and if you're a senior person, do some of the younger people in your office a favor by teaching them how. So I did that for 5 years, sold life insurance. The next 10 years, I got married about 5 years in, and I thought, I can't be working at nights like this and sitting around a guy's living room who probably doesn't want me there anyway. So I got into the employee benefits business. I brought a guy in to take over my life insurance business. Henceforth, I took 30% of the cash flow on all those people, and he got 70%. And that was the beginning of building the business. For the first 5 years, it was myself and my mother. We didn't have a good intercom system, so she had to knock on the wall when somebody came in. It worked. It worked. Anyway, so I started going to the employee benefits business. I have in our firm that I've been specializing in that because it was daytime activity. And guess what? The decision rules were more or less business decision rules. Less emotion, more hard facts. And I do take the point that people buy an emotion and justify facts, but still, I like fact-based selling where price was an issue or quality of product was an issue, but they had to have the benefits anyway. As different from life insurance, where I may have to sell the product to begin with. The product was there typically, and I sold very few people that didn't have the product, but I said, I can probably get this for you at, would you be interested if I got this for you at 10% less, but I match the benefits? Or would you prefer that I improve the benefits by 10%? Prove it to you. And that was, I'm going to talk about this later. No, I won't, because I'm going to talk about it now. That was the deal before the deal. I spent too much time running around the country. I'd have a spreadsheet. I'd have their existing plan data. I'd have the existing contract itself, and I'd go up for quotes. And I never got them to agree on what basis they would make the decision. I wasn't asking them to make the decision up front. On what basis would you make the decision? I learned to do that fairly quickly. And if I said 10% thinking that I could do it, when looking at the nature of it, if they said that's not enough, I need 20, and I couldn't get them back to 10, I'm going to fold my tent right then instead of spending hours and hours and a goal I couldn't achieve. So they've made a deal with me. If I prove that I've done it, then what do I expect? That we're going to get the deal. Now, did it always happen? No. Did I think those people were disingenuous? Did I think they were even unethical? Yeah. Did I ever go back and see them? No. I mean, your word is your bond in my view. I did what I did, they didn't do it. But in the majority, people came through. So I did that business for about 10 years, and I bought a couple more guys in to do that because I really wanted to get into then we were getting financial planning. My number, I'm CFP number 43 in Canada. Tells you how old I am. CFPs came out in 1972. But I got it because I wanted to expand and get into the financial advice-giving business, thinking I could sell a whole range of products under that head, and knowing that financial advisors, fair or not, had a better reputation than life insurance salesmen, fair or not. So that's the background. Now, oops, wrong way, this way. So here's some marketing ideas. I'm just going to rapid fire them at you. Here we go. So first thing I want to say to you is, I like to read, and I think you have to read to kind of understand a whole host of things in our business. Read Positioning, The Battle for Your Mind by Jack Trout and Al Rice. That's a book that tells you how to position yourself in the marketplace so you can differentiate yourself from the crowd. If you don't differentiate yourself from the crowd, in some area or in some way or another, you're not going to be paid any better than the crowd. Simple. Second book is one by Dan Richards in Toronto, Getting Clients and Keeping Clients. Great, great book. It was published about 5 years ago. It was a bestseller business book. It's still applicable today as it was then. And then, I guess the one that sometimes is forgotten is that we need to act as an advisor, not a salesperson. That word has been used a lot today, and I'm glad to see it. It's a process that we sell. It's advice that we sell. The product is like a prescription, in the sense that a doctor figures out what my problem is. That's the advice part. You fill the advice with the physician by filling the prescription. We fill our financial advice, and I often use doctor analogies. I call myself a financial doctor, did when I was working. And then I write a prescription for them, which indeed is the proposal. That's the financial prescription. So act as an advisor. So if you're going to act as an advisor, how do you act? You don't act this way. This is the way that we all acted, and some still do, to begin with. Imagine the vertical line is a net. The game here is tennis. And if I'm a salesperson, I'm on the left side of the net, and my adversary is my prospective client. And his, whatever they are, financial concerns. By the way, I don't say objectives. People don't have financial objectives, they have financial concerns. Forget the word objectives. You have objectives. They do too, but they don't like to think of them that way. They have financial worries, financial concerns. Can I afford to send my kid to college? Can I afford to retire and maintain my income? Financial concerns. But this model suggests, unfortunately, a classic salesperson prospect model. I'm going to try and sell you something, and you're going to resist me, but I, as my adversary, but I have a great tennis game. I can parry any shot you hit back to me. That is to say, I can answer any objection you have. I've heard them all. I know them all, the answers off by heart. That's the sales model. Think of your lawyer or your accountant. This is their model. Notice, same tennis game. But, unlike the previous model where the salesperson's on one side of the net, the prospective client now is on the same side as not the salesperson anymore, but rather the advisor. So the salesperson is morphed into an advisor. And this prospective client and the advisor are working hand in hand, arm in arm, to face their common adversary, which is the client's financial problems or concerns. You have to get yourself in that position to ever be seen as an advisor. The prospective client wants to work with you, not to fight you over a sales and prospect. Big positioning item. And if you learn that, if you do nothing else but change your positioning to this one, you'll be far more successful. So, some other marketing ideas. Client letters. In the reception area of our firm, I had two 8.5 by 11 binders, company name, logo on the front and all that stuff. In one of them, there was a set of letters from satisfied clients. In another, I had a really big nest at the University of British Columbia who had a money purchase pension plan where I was fortunately their guy, and I had lots of letters from professors who had done business with us. The staff would know who was sitting in, the chairs were all numbered in the reception area because I worked with a bunch of fellows. When I left, there were 57 of us, 23 advisors, and the rest, I guess that would be 30 odd support staff. And they would know which binder to put on the chair in front of, or not the chair, but the table in front of these people, which already had the morning newspaper. I didn't want other stuff around to clutter it up and take their attention away. And that would be out there just before they arrived. Just before they arrived. And they would know, that is, the receptionist would know which chairs to sit them in. The prospective clients or clients don't know this is going on, but they sat in those two chairs for a reason, because that material was right in front of them. And I waited a very discrete number of minutes, maybe 5, because you don't want to overplay your hand here and get people annoyed because you're late. That's a doctor's job, not mine. I want to do some business with them. So I knew something coming into the office. They're coming into my office. I knew that they had read that material. So I had hopefully up-positioned myself. My whole game was to try and get at least at ground level. I didn't want to be in a hole that I had to dig myself out of. I wanted to be at ground level, or hopefully a little above ground level. And so in about 4 or 5 minutes, that staff person who put that there to begin with, they would come back, and they came what we call the long way, which was the long way from the reception area to my office. Why did I have them go the long way? I wanted them to take in the environment. I wanted them to see that we were reasonably substantive size-wise. I don't have to say anything. Their eyes and their eyes are telling them everything. And that's just as with the letter. Their eyes are telling them things. And then they'd sit down, and I wouldn't be in the office. They'd be seated, and they'd be seated in certain spots. I didn't have any sales regalia stuff up there, ever. I didn't want to be seen as a salesman, even in the early days, because they were fearful of me. There were designations that were apropos for the business we were doing, university stuff, and that would all be in view. They couldn't not see it. Maybe another minute I wait, and I'm just down the hall. They don't know where I am, and I come in. Now 3 things have happened. Oh, by the way, in the reception area, if they had been there before, and they were coming back for a review, the assistant would say, Mrs. Jones, that's cappuccino with 2 shots, and Mr. Jones, coffee black? Well, yes. What happened there? Nothing really, except it was on the green sheet. They had been in the year before, maybe, or even they made a note of it on the database. Easy to do. But what does it show? It shows you pay attention to small details. And there's an assumption in the minds of most of us that says if you pay attention to small details, it's likely you're going to pay attention to the bigger details. The money they have that they are very concerned is handled well. So all of that is by way of establishing an environment that hopefully should help me. When I start off, I have said nothing. They haven't even seen me yet, and I think I'm positioned okay to begin with. Right? So consider that. I got involved Oops. Technical nerd. Okay, so client letters I talked about. Media. There was a guy who wrote one of the very first financial planning columns in Canada in 1972, and he wrote a piece one day that had some minor errors in it. And I phoned him up, and I said who I was, and I said, I read your piece, thank you for that. I understand that this is going to be a regular column. He said, it is. And I said, there were a couple of small things in there that I thought you might want me to talk to you about, so that perhaps next time you wouldn't repeat them. And he said, oh, really? What were they? And I said, I told him, and he said, oh, that's interesting. And so anyway, I said, look, I can give you some other help, because you're now looking for your sources all over the place, so you can write columns about various personal financial issues. So I took him out to lunch. We got along famously, and this man made a giant difference in my business, not because he used my name every time. I said to him, look, there are guys who have a different point of view than me on this matter. So you need to have both points of view expressed in your column. So tell me the problem or the issue you're going to write about. I'll tell you who I know in the area. I'll give you another source besides myself who thinks along the same lines as me, and I'll give you guys who disagree with us. What am I doing? I'm showing him that I can be objective, knowing that he has to be objective. I know other guys who've tried to break into that relationship over the years, and it was all about them. You need to use me because I'm an expert in this, blah, blah, blah. The emphasis should be on how can I help you? And if I help you in the process, guess what? I'm helping myself, but I have to have a primary focus on helping him. And that's just spreading your bread, as they say, and inevitably it'll come back to you. It doesn't always, and if it doesn't, you can kind of wind down the relationship. This one worked very, very well. So consider working with the media. Have good company newsletters that you don't take from a service. That's easy to do, but then that's like everybody else. All our newsletters are written by guys within the firm. And I had the job when I was there of being the editor, and we shared the work. I'd say, okay, this is the lineup for next month, or we did it every 6 weeks. I need you to write me a piece on this, this, and this, and that's how we handled that. So consider a newsletter. I wrote a book that's no longer in print, but I can arrange to get some more for you if you'd like. That is called Life Insurance for Canadians, How Much, What Kind, From Whom, and I wrote that in the first 5 years of the business. The products that are used in the book are way out of date, but I think the philosophy is still accurate, so you might inquire about getting that. Again, if you, I'll give you my email address. I have, I don't know, 5 or 6 boxes at home. I don't know how many are there. Lots. I haven't talked to you about that. But showbiz, isn't that great? Okay. All right, some more sales ideas, some sales ideas. Those were marketing ideas. Think about what I just said, and you can see how they're reach out ideas. They're not sales ideas, they're marketing ideas. Sales ideas. Read, again, I'm going to always start with the book. Read The Simple Sale by John Savage. It's as valid today as it was 45 years ago, and I had the good fortune of seeing him at my very first meeting, and what a difference he made in my life. I have a high regard for the man. He was a wonderful guy, and I miss him. Another book that I think is very important for those of us who sold life insurance and continue to is a book called Human Life Values. Philip Eaton spoke at a roundtable meeting, I don't know, 35 years ago, a USC prof, and boy, did he change my life. I was like so many guys in the business, I guess I should coordinate these, in the sense that I was told, now look at I'm talking to a married man, a couple of kids, sell them 10,000 whole life with a whole series of purchase options. And I did. And I felt guilty when I listened to Eaton. My brother, who's an attorney, said to me, I'd have so much fun with guys like you. Walk into see a married couple with kids, and you sell them 10,000 whole life. And I knew why. I mean, I learned why. Because I can sue the pants off you, especially if you have, through your literature, positioned yourself as a professional, yada, yada, yada. I've got all these designations. And you sold the guy $10,000 in life insurance. I'll go back a lot of years. He's making $50,000 a year. He's got 3 kids, a mortgage, and a wife. Sell him whatever he can afford. I get that part. But if it's term insurance, sell him as much as you can for the money he's got. So at least then you can't be sued. Anyway, so I listened to Eden, and his book is right, it talks about human life values. Every person starts out of university is on the hoof today worth, who knows, 10, $15 million, meaning that if they consume 1/3 of their income themselves and the rest gets consumed by their families, on the hoof, they're worth $7, $8 million, and we sell them $100,000 of insurance. It's ridiculous. I'm not saying that everybody, and they won't, will buy as much as represents their human life value, future human life value, discounted to the present. But we got to sell them a lot more than we do, and that's the professional job. It's not about the kind of product, it's about the primary goal should be to sell them enough or as much as you can. Disability insurance is what I used to sell to single people because I did have a need for that. Individual life insurance, I focused on the value of the breadwinner. After reading Eden's book, I could do a quick calculation for all of them to say, how much money do you think you're going to make, or you're making now? What kind of increase do you think you're going to have on average over the rest of your working career? Will HP calc better? Do you know how much money you're going to earn? You know how much money your family's going to lose if you die tomorrow? Knocking off 1/3 for you, let's say. You know, you insure your house for replacement value if there's a fire. Likewise, your car, you insure for value if there's a devastating crash. Those are chintzy assets by comparison to your value, and you're woefully underinsured. You can sell up easily if you use comparisons like that, because most everybody has house insurance for replacement value. They don't have life insurance for anything close to replacement value. I mentioned the deal before the deal. I won't repeat that. Sample plans. It's for the last 20, 25 years of my career, I did nothing but what I think Mickey and Matt do now, primarily, though Matt's probably shifting a little bit, but Mickey certainly, retirement income plan. I'm going to talk about that more later. But I had behind my desk, or my credenza, 5 different plans, actual plans with the names removed. So the initial meeting I would have, last time I left this, I had them in my office, correct? So I tell them right off the top, this meeting is one where we will absorb the cost. Or, a variation of that, this meeting is to my account. We have expenses here, they can see that. I don't want you to pay for this meeting. You know why? Of course they don't, or they don't say. Say, well, there are 2 reasons. Number one, if I don't think I can help you by the end of the meeting, how would you feel if I sent you a bill? You wouldn't feel very good about it because I just said I can't help you, but oh, by the way, I'm going to send you a bill. Alternatively, you may not want me to help you. Always allow that you're not all that great, as perhaps some of us have a hard time doing. We may not get along. You may have a friend in the bit. Whatever the reason, you may not want to deal with me. Again, I want to be, or I may not want to deal with you. I feel comfortable walking away because I didn't charge you for this, and hopefully you got an idea or two you can pass on to whomever, your brother-in-law. But if I charge, it's more difficult. So it's to our account. It is not free. Never use the word free. It's not free. Somebody's paying the rent here, right? It's to our account. Very powerful phrase. They relax because they know they can, and listen now because they're not thinking as you are in the back of a cab with a meter going. They're not thinking about that, and that's very, very powerful in my experience. So I would pull at the end of the meeting. I'd pull one of the plans off the shelf, and I'd say, "This is a plan that I've done for another existing client, where his or her their situation very similar to yours." Very similar. Let me take you through it for a few minutes because I want you to see what kind of plan, generally speaking, I recommend that we prepare for you, if you'd like us to. And it had lots of great graphics, mostly graphics, bar charts, line charts, colors, lots of white space, and then, you know, there may be 4 or 5 pages of numerical detail. But I don't want to go into that because I'm a great believer in that just supports the graphics. I don't want to go into the line-by-line detail. People don't want, they want graphics. I mean, I love the one that Mickey and Matt put up there where the color schemes were there. I love the fact they use deficit in red, which is what it should be, and how by entering different numbers into their software, they can change the look of it. That's a very powerful program. We're going to look into that because it says a million things without any numbers, words even. You get it. I pull out a plan and I'd say to them, now, as I say, this is the sort of plan that I'd like to prepare for you. If you'd like me to proceed, here's what we'd have to do. We'd have to do the research. I need to have some more facts. I've got a questionnaire here I've partly filled in. I'm going to give it to you in an envelope with a stamp on it, pre-addressed back to me. And if you want to proceed, you need to finish the questionnaire and send it back in the envelope along with a check for X. X was never a number that we had printed anywhere. X depended upon a host of things. If I didn't want them and it appeared to me that they were still coming to me, this guy's nothing but trouble because he's had 4 financial advisors in the last week. I didn't want him, so I booked the fee way up, knowing what would happen. Good. Or if, sadly, they were in really bad shape and I couldn't afford to work with them because we got paid based essentially on the premiums or the money we may have gotten. You can't make any money off the financial planning fee because that's just a dead rent. That's to cover off op costs in that first while. I don't mean to make money that way. The best financial planners in Vancouver now are charging $500 an hour. They can't make as much money as you and I can over the course of a year, however they slice and dice it. And that's a pretty good rate. So I would show them this, and then I would say, oh, excuse me, I need to run down to the washroom. Remember, they haven't heard me say washroom before. I just wasn't there when they arrived. Why am I doing that? I already told them the fee. I told them what they have to do is to send it back with a check for this amount, and we'll proceed. But I want you to have time to think about this. I don't want to put any pressure on you. I want you to have time to talk about it together. Oh, excuse me, and I'd be back in 2 minutes. I didn't have to go to the washroom. I go down, have a glass of water. I wanted them to do what? Talk to each other in my absence. I'd close the door behind me. Talk to them in my absence. Talk to each other in my absence. More often than not, they say, no need, but we'll go ahead. I say, okay, well, fill this inside. And I said, the reason I need you to do that and send it back is we can't start the work until we receive the material back. As soon as I get it back, I turn it over to the research people in my team and start working on the process. I'll prepare the plan. They'll give me the hard research numbers. I'll prepare the plan, have it all typed up, and she'll call you and set a meeting and I'll go over it with you. So an approach that you might want to think about. Again, the fee was designed to make sure that I didn't have tire kickers. Okay, again, you don't want to waste your time. You won't be seen as a professional if they think you've got more time than anything else, or you're going to be nagging them and all of that. Most of us have never looked up the probabilities of dying before 65, or getting totally disabled before 65, or making it to 65. I'll use that arbitrarily as a retirement age. Everybody knows intuitively that the chances of getting to 65 are greater than any of the possibilities of long-term disability occurring before then or death. Agreed? You should find out what those probabilities are. Because sometimes people order their affairs in the way they want. And if you had a limited series of resources to solve any one of the problems that would arise in any of these 3 scenarios, if you knew that the one that was most probable is retirement, then you might talk about that first and work on the other ones later. So think about the probabilities, because the probabilities say you should be working on your retirement first, your disability second, and your death third. Most of us work the other way. I'm not saying what should be done. I just say to people, these are the probabilities. I think, because of the dependency period of your kids in particular, notwithstanding these, you better get some life insurance. But these are the probabilities. I would sometimes use what I was described here as the machine in the basement analogy. And again, I use the machine in place of the person. I said, if you had a magic machine in your basement that ground out 5 $1,000 bills every month, and had a useful life of 35 years, and the probability of it breaking down completely was, fill in the death probability, tell them that, but What would you insure the machine for? I always had a kick on it. How much per month? $60,000 a year? That's, that much? Well, no, because I can discount it to present value at a reasonable rate, but well into 7 figures. That's what you're worth. You're that machine. You're that machine. If it makes sense for you to insure the machine that way, in that amount, what about you? You're the machine. And again, I said about the houses versus the cars versus your replacement value. Now I'm going to talk about my area of interest, and hopefully some of you are in the retirement business, as I know some are, just kind of guessing from the age of the cohort here. All right, here's a series of numbers. This is a class test. The annual return, the compound annual return on line A is what? Oh, really? Sorry? Line A, the compound annual return. If I put away $100,000, what's the compound annual return at that rate of interest each year? 7% compound. Yeah? Right? Hey, Liz, this class, I'm in trouble here. 7%. Let me go over that again. All right. Now in the second row, we have a series of 10 numbers again, and I want you to notice that line B and line C have the same numbers in them. They're just in a different sequence. Remember the word sequence. We agree they're the same numbers? All right. Now I'm accumulating the same $100,000 over 10 years, but I'm doing it with the return set out in B. What return do you think I have over the period? That smarty pants has looked at this before. The answer is, no, we canceled it. There, now you know all three of them. Anyway, it's 7%. Now the interesting thing is that people look at C, if I did this right and I didn't, and say, oh, it's got to be less than 7 because why? The negative numbers begin at the beginning. Think of it as adding a column of numbers. If you had these numbers and you were adding them together, would the sum of the numbers in B and the sum of the numbers in C be the same? Of course they would. It doesn't matter the order in which you're adding them, does it? They're all the same, B and C, and A. Right? Again, I'm adding in a column. So, the point I want to make with this diagram is it doesn't really matter how you get your 7%. If you're there for 10 years, the total at the other end is going to be the same. The accumulated total, 7% compound. Now, I think I have here, if I'm going to do that. Yeah, there's the total. This is going to drive me crazy. Nope, ahead of myself, sorry. Okay, after 10 years, there's the total, right? And you'd expect that, wouldn't you? Because it just was, as I said, 7% compound regardless. There's the total. So, when you're dealing with your clients who are in the pre-retirement stage, accumulating money, they have time to get to their target. They just have to have the guts to stay the course, particularly when the market turns south. By the way, I'm happy for you guys in the US that your year-to-date return is so fantastic. Just for the record, in Canada, it's about 1% year-to-date, measured by the TSX S&P composite. Bad year for us. So, all right, so you accept that would be the accumulated total for the reasons I mentioned. Gee, I hope I can do this right. I'm ruining the surprise effect of this. Sheesh. Okay, now we're not in the accumulation phase anymore. We are in the disposition phase. Now I'm going to draw $7,000 a year from monies accumulated to, as we saw earlier, $196,000 if they were left alone. Now the person's retiring. And we're going to give them the same returns at 65 for the following 10 years as we gave them from 55 to 65. And we saw from 55 to 65, didn't matter, as long as the average return was 7% compounded, the total was $196,000. Now, and this is key, and will get you a lot of retirement business because many people don't understand this. If you say you're going to earn 7% a year for the 10 years leading up to retirement, and I'm going to, and you can't do this, but I'm going to guarantee you an average return of 7% a year in retirement. They say, and so how much money should you have left? I had a smarter class of clients than you guys. How much money do you have left after 10 years of retirement? They're going to say $196,000, aren't they? Because I took the same percentage out as I got on the way up, and now on the way out. Wrong, class. And here's why. If indeed they got a steady 7 on the way up, and they got a 7% steady amount on the way out, call it $7,000 a year, the answer is $100,000. No, sorry, remember it. Oh, shit, did it again. It accumulated to 190, or what was it, 198,000? Yeah, okay. Well, there's going to be 100,000 left after 7 years, which tells you a lot that when you're taking money out, if the market is turning south, you're exacerbating the rate of decline. So you'd expect, of course, in the second case, notice he got all the fat returns early, so he had 111,000. Those big returns early paid off. In C, he got the lousy returns early. So it's taking me a long time to get to this. On the accumulation side, it doesn't matter a whit as long as the average return is X. On the disposition side, even at an average return of the same X, it matters a lot depending on the sequence of the returns. It's called sequence risk. And you know who the most famous guy writing about this in Canada is? Sorry? Moshe Milevsky, that's correct. A really interesting man, one guy who spoke at the round table. Okay, in the interest of time, oh wait, I've got another one in here where I have to hit it right. Oh, practice management idea, there we go. First of all, I'm going to talk about Thanksgiving cards. I heard somebody poo-poo that idea today, so I got to deal with that. I don't know who that somebody was, Mark. When you're thinking about sending out cards to have your clients appreciate you, to show you appreciate them, when you send Christmas cards, and I've made this mistake, I have a lot of Jewish clients, and one of them said to me after about 10 years of getting my credit, hey Jim, I'm Jewish. You know, oh. You can make a mistake, inadvertent as it may be, you can make a mistake. Birthday cards, frankly, I think they're disingenuous. I don't get one from my lawyer or my accountant. I just think they're a bit schmaltzy, birthday cards. But we used to send them years ago because we always knew their birthday because we had a file, right? What should you send? What you should be sending is whether handwritten notes, which we do as well, as Mickey and Matt. You should be sending thanks. What better time to say thanks than at Thanksgiving? Last week in Canada, not yet in the US. So we send Thanksgiving cards where we show a fall scene, you know, the leaves changing colors and so on, and a sentiment that says, we really appreciate the support you've given our firm. Thank you for it. Or a variation of that. The picture's different every year, the sentiment's a little different every year, and they're all hand-signed. Which brings me to statements. We have an approach in our firm where we send consolidated reports. That we consolidate everything they have with whatever product manufacturer into a simple, consolidated statement. Hard to do because we can't draw on the same sort of infrastructure that the companies have, but where we can't, we have to then add a human element. But we do it because I can tell you this for sure about retired people. The one thing they want in every part, and I speak as one, in every part of their life is their life simplified, especially around money. So give them a consolidated report. Your competition will have a heck of a time matching. We did a lot of work to pull in stuff and have it synthesized into a common format. But it's paid off big time. And every statement, and they go quarterly, has a handwritten note from their advisor, handwritten again. Clay tells me he sits in front of the TV for 2 weeks. Don't somebody pay attention? They don't get statements from any product supplier that have handwritten notes on them, or from any stockbroker I've ever seen. There may be some. All right, differentiate yourself in every way that you can so you stand out as different. So, practice management ideas. Thanksgiving card wasn't on there, but I'll debunk that Marv argument. Okay. Follow a consistent daily work routine. I have a little schedule. I have hard copy schedules. I got tired of guys phoning up and saying, can you make this meeting? And I'd say, well, geez, I got to get out of this program. So I'm back to the old book after about a year of that. And I say, I can tell you in a second. And in it, the book is pre-marked with when I was working, a consistent daily work routine where between 9 and 10:30 I'd be on the blower. The hardest work I ever did every day. It got easier as time got on because I was mostly talking to clients or strong referrals. But in the first year, and it was said by more than one person today, that's the toughest work you'll ever do in this business. If you can get over that hump, which takes 5, 6, 7 years, and some don't get over it. You have to figure out different ways of doing it, as Mark pointed out. But, follow a consistent daily routine and put the important things first. And that's the most important thing you can do every day, followed by then seeing a prospect, a client, or a center. I'm going to create some controversy here, but my American friends, and Mark can attest to this, as can Mickey, and I guess the other folks have gone. They've heard me speak before. They're long gone. Licenses. In the U.S., men and women who want to get into the mutual fund business to add to their offerings get what is called in the U.S. a Series 6 license. If you want to have a full securities license in the U.S., you have a full Series 7 license, which incorporates the Series 6 license. Why do you think most of the members of the top of the table and the round table have Series, in North America, in the U.S., Series 7 licenses? Because they can have the broadest possible product solution shelf. If I go to a doctor, coming back to that analogy, and I know he can only write 3 prescriptions, and I think I've got something that requires something he doesn't have in those 3, I'm not that confident in him. I'm going to try and find a physician that has the broadest possible solution, so I'm only limited in his knowledge of those solutions. That can be quite limiting too, but presuming he's up to date, I'd assume he have everything that I might need on his shelf in the way of a prescription process. Come back to our business. If I have a limited shelf, and again, some of the folks selling mutual funds today were people who are licensed to selling seg funds today. We're licensed to sell mutual funds until a few years ago, and a lot of them have said to me, well, I like seg funds better, that's why I canceled my mutual fund license. Bullshit. Some did, most did not. Why not? Because the oversight in the securities business is more severe, and they didn't want to face that oversight. You are doing that at a cost to your clients, because frankly, as much as seg funds are great, I call them mutual funds on training wheels, as much as they're great, your shelf is limited, and you've made it limited. So let me encourage you to think about going and getting a securities license to add to your life license, unless you want to continue to, and many do, I suppose, position yourself as a life insurance salesperson. That's fine. But don't call yourself a financial advisor if you've got a limited number of prescriptions to write, because your client may not get the product or solution they want because you don't have it or won't get it, or won't form an alliance with somebody on the outside. You don't have to have it yourself, who can provide it. So broaden your offerings. And I don't mind losing a sale. Well, I did mind. But I never minded if I lost the sale because I didn't have the answer. I hated it. I hated it when I had the answer. You don't deserve to get all the sales if you don't have the answer, if you're trying to plug something in the form of a black box solution. I'm going to continue to do it this way because it's easier for, well, no, it isn't easier. This way. Always use the meeting agenda, and as I said to the younger folks today, the very first item on the agenda should always be blank. You have the other items there, you know roughly what people, so I start off by saying, if it's a brand new person, I'd say, I have a pretty good idea what I think you want me to talk about today, and I have an agenda so we can stick to what I hope you want to hear about. But I can't be absolutely sure because we've not met before. So I've left the number one item blank. Tell me, so that I'll make it the number one item. What is the largest financial concern you have right now? Notice I didn't say objective concern. They'll stall, they don't know what to say, and I'll say, no, well, when you and your wife talk about your finances, what's the dominant subject? Is it retirement? Might it be your kid's college education? Might it be your chair? What is it you talk about? And shut up and listen. And they'll look at each other and say, man, they're going to tell you what the number one item on that agenda should be. Deal with their item first. I've, again, gone down, time's passed, I've gone down the road of my agenda for 20 minutes, and I've left them way back at the start because that's not what they wanted to talk about. I assumed something I should not have assumed. So find out what they want, and then Dale Carnegie said it best. Salesmanship, what's it about? Simply, he said, it's about finding out what your customers want and then getting it for them. That's it. Profound, simple, but nevertheless profound. I need a person here to do this. I need staff to do this. Specialized. People who make most money in most professions are specialists. Think medicine again. Ophthalmologists and radiologists make the most money among physicians. Did you know that? Ophthalmologists and radiologists. Doesn't matter what province you're from. They specialize. The people who make the most money in our business specialize too. Whether it's retirement or it's a life insurance professional who focuses on life insurance. Specialize. Specialize, and specialize in an area for which you have a personal passion. And I use that word advisor. When my kids were at university, inevitably sometime over dinner on Sunday, they'd say, Dad, I'm on the fourth year now, I don't know what I'm going to. And the discussion would always be the same, and they know my answer. I'd say, I don't know what you should do, but Mom and I will pay for that same kind of tests I have to try and narrow the focus, and we'll do that just before you graduate. But I'll tell you this, I know this for sure. If you can find work for which you have a passion, and I use the word passion advisedly, you'll never work a day in your life. Defining work as addition utility as economist. You'll never work passion. Well, how do I know, Dad, if I have a passion? I said, I know how I knew when I was really working, I had my alarm set at 4 or 5 or 6 a.m. to get up, depending on how busy my day was going to be. And I said, that's because I couldn't wait to get out of bed. Now, these were not in the early years, I'll give you that. Quite the opposite. But I had a passion for what I was doing when I found my niche. I couldn't wait to get at it. I've got a friend that's a neurological surgeon. He said, that's exactly what me. I'd get home from the hospital at 2 and I'd get up at 4. I couldn't wait to get at it again. Find your passion. Young people, find your passion in our business. Maybe if you narrow your specialty, you'll more likely find it than if you don't. So specialize. Delegate. The very best people do what they do best, and they delegate the rest. There are probably 70% of the things that you do during the day that you can delegate. What you do best is probably on the old finding, minding, grinding makeup. If you're a finder, you have the best talent that's in the shortest supply. Try and be, if you can, a finder. And you can get people to mind and grind. Grinders are folks that are very sort of IT literate, not illiterate, literate. Minders are people who look after the client files once you've got them. Finders, whether it's you know how to market, you know how to use newspapers, magazines, books, any number of things, nests. If you can bring them to the front door, which is what I did in our firm as we grew, because all the other people were really good, and I thought, okay, I'm going to specialize in doing this. And as I said earlier, I took 30% of the revenue on that file by social insurance number or by corporate tax number, and gave the guy in my office who was going to look after it 70%. He had to bear all the expenses for looking after the client. we made roughly the same money after his expenses. But per hour, I got paid a heck of a lot more than he did. So share. Share is how you can help others, and interestingly, help yourself through the multiplier effect. Okay, well, I told Marv we'd be ready to go momentarily, about 4 o'clock, so I'm going to finish this up. No, I'm not. Oh, where the heck did that page go? I missed that page. Sorry. Oh, that's okay. I'm going to go buy it anyway. Shit, this didn't work today either. It's supposed to say, but that's all, folks. Anyway, I thank you for your time and attention. Okay. 2 questions to use the rest of the minute. Any 2 questions? No questions? Okay, thank you. Yes, sir. As I tried to say, I decided I was more interested in going from life insurance to employee benefits for practical reasons, being able to work during the day. And so I needed somebody to look after my life clients. I oversaw the work, but I laid them off for 70% of the revenue, helped him. And then they did a good job, so that department built. The same with employee benefits, that built. And the biggest department is retirement, and that built. So leading by example as to what I was doing and trying to find people who were interested in it like me. Okay, again, I do appreciate your time. God bless you all.